There is an effort underway to remove DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, who is the figurehead of this open border crisis. And some Republicans want to impeach him, and the very principled, reasonable, moderate Republicans are saying that this is a bad idea. They're saying that Mayorkas might be terrible, you see, but he has not committed an impeachable offense. And therefore, because I'm a very principled conservative, I'm not going to become like those Democrats, you see. I'm not going to actually wield any political power or threaten the liberal establishment. No. I'm just going to lose with dignity. Yes, that's right. Follow me on the Bill Kristol podcast next week. And it's just all completely ridiculous. There is a very, very good legal argument for impeaching DHS Secretary Mayorkas. Very good argument. There's an even better historical argument for impeaching Mayorkas. And there is an ironclad political argument. The Heritage Foundation actually has a good piece on this. I encourage you to read the whole thing. Mayorkas feigns ignorance. He says, quote, "It's very difficult to make sense of it. It's very difficult, so I don't try to make sense of it. I'm doing my work. And making sure it doesn't distract me from it." Doing your work, you're emphatically not doing your work. Your work is to secure the border. You are not only failing to do that, you are intentionally not doing that. You're shirking your responsibilities. So what's the legal background here? To impeach someone, they need to have committed treason, or high crimes and misdemeanors, other high crimes and misdemeanors. So does this count? Well, it would seem to count. There's only been one cabinet secretary who's ever been impeached in American history. This was Secretary of War William Belknap in 1876. And what was he impeached for? Among the charges included were that he, quote, disregarded his duty as Secretary of War. So you're not supposed to impeach someone for maladministration, just for being kind of incompetent. But historically speaking, now we're going back 150 years, the one time this has happened, the one precedent we have, is that a cabinet secretary was impeached for actively disregarding his duty in his cabinet position. Furthermore, the House Judiciary Committee outlined about 50 years ago when impeachment is proper. And impeachment, according to them, is proper when an official exceeds the powers of his office, or behaves in a manner grossly incompatible with the proper functions and purpose of his office, or employs the power of his office for an improper purpose. So even according to that, the 1970s, surely and that was obviously a Democrat House, surely Mayorkas qualifies. He is abusing his power. His behavior is grossly incompatible with the proper functions of his office. The function of his office is to secure the border. That's largely his job. And he's not doing it. He's intentionally not doing it. He is abusing his power by releasing these illegals into the interior of the country. He's certainly exceeding the powers of his office. And he's seeking to imply the powers of his office for an improper purpose. Flood the country with foreigners. Checks every box. And then you get to, that's the legal and the historical basis, but then you get to the political basis. The Democrats now use impeachment in this country as just a kind of a referendum on leaders that they don't like. They impeached Donald Trump twice, but the first time they impeached him in 2019, they impeached him for acting, quote, in a manner contrary to his trust as president and subversive of constitutional government, to the great prejudice of the cause of law and justice and to the manifest injury of the people of the United States. Now, that is so absurdly broad, especially when we're talking about impeaching a president of the United States. It's ridiculous. It was ridiculous then. But if that's the new precedent, could Chuck Schumer even argue, could Mayorkas himself argue that he has not done that, that he's not acting in a manner contrary to his trust as the Secretary of Homeland Security and subversive to constitutional government? He's intentionally breaking the law and encouraging hundreds of thousands, millions of people to break the law as well. Basic laws like who gets to come into the country. Impeach Mayorkas. There's no real argument against this. Good legal case, stronger historical case, airtight political case. And yet there are two Republican congressmen who don't want to do it. Tom McClintock and Ken Buck. Tom McClintock says, quote, The only way to stop the border invasion is to replace the Biden administration at the ballot box. Swapping one leftist for another is a fantasy, solves nothing, excuses Biden's culpability, and unconstitutionally expands impeachment that someday will bite Republicans. So this is the classic squish argument. Look, I'm sympathetic to Tom McClintock. I don't want to unfairly malign him, but he's just flat wrong here. This is the worst refrain of the squishes. And they say, well, listen, if we in any way push back against Democrat injustice today, then hypothetically, in the future, they might do it to us, even though they're already doing it, and they've been doing it for years. If we fight back at all, the Democrats in the future might continue to do the very thing that they are doing to us right now. Can you imagine? Boy, that's sure scary, isn't it? Well, it's scary that it's happening now. It's not a hypothetical, and I wish we would do anything about it. He says it unconstitutionally expands impeachment. I agree. I wish impeachment were narrower than it is, but it's not unconstitutional. It's not ahistorical. It's not illegal. It's just, it satisfies all of those criteria. Historical, legal, politically wise. You got to do it. The other one's Ken Buck. He's retiring. And he's also come out against the impeachment efforts. Unfortunate. I hope we can flip McClintock back, because there are only 3 Republicans that determine the House majority. It's not like this is some 20-member majority. It's a 3-vote majority. So you lose 2 of them. Okay, well, now you lose 1 more and it's over. And the Democrats are very good at unifying. The Republicans are very bad at unifying. But if we can't unify to take a vote that is largely symbolic, that is totally justified by history and politics and law, to stop the issue of our time, the defining political issue of our time, that is mass migration, the complete blowing up of our borders and an invasion from foreign countries. If we can't do that, what's the GOP good for? What are we going to do? We're going to cut taxes a little bit more maybe in the future or something. Okay. What are we going to do? What's the GOP going to do? Build violins that we can fiddle while the country burns? Okay, fine. If the Republican Party can't unify on, hey, maybe let's stop the mass invasion that Democrats are using to create a permanent electoral majority, then just wrap it up, man. Wrap it up and let's get a new political party, okay? President Biden has just come out and explained a conversation that he had. This was at the beginning of his presidency with French President François Mitterrand, who died in 1996.
You know, right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. And it was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, "America's back." And Mitterrand from France, looked at me and said, "You know, why? How long are you back for?"
And he said to me, "Hey, Jack," he said, "You want to pass that croissant?" I said, "I don't have enough butter there, pal." And we were going swimming. We went swimming down there by playing banjo, and where am I? This is the sort of stuff that old people do in the final months of their lives. I'm not intending to pick on Biden particularly or to be all that provocative. Just anyone who's ever had a grandparent decline and die knows that this is the sort of stuff they do. They confuse not just dates, not just, this past Tuesday with 2 Tuesdays ago. They confuse decades. They confuse people. They confuse figures and epochs. It's not as though Mitterrand in France was the previous president. It was Mitterrand and then it was Emmanuel Macron, who's the current president of France. The guy was president of France in the 80s through the early to mid 90s. And then he died a year after he left in 1995. He died in 1996. And what does Biden know? It's just like your grandparents. On their way out, they would talk about, Aunt Sally, who died 20 years prior, as though they were just talking to her yesterday. I'm not saying it's the Sixth Sense. I'm not saying he's actually talking to dead people, but he certainly is confusing whole epochs, whole eras of politics. And the crazy thing is, that man might get reelected. Man, what a great clip that was. Now, hey, hold up, man. Ring that bell. Subscribe to the Michael Knowles Show podcast. We'll see you next time.